So it can be any context. It can be, as you mentioned, low performers, and the project management need to provide feedback, constructive feedback. So that's one type of the uncomfortable conversation. The other type is things like we are behind plan or behind budget, and we need to discuss this with the client. Or there is some scope creep where there is lots of new requests that we didn't anticipate for in the planning phase, and they will impact the plan and the budget. To put those on the table and discuss them. So there are different types of difficult conversations, and as long as it makes the person uncomfortable, that's a difficult conversation.
Okay, I see.
And yes, I mean, the second part of your question, there are training on those how to handle the difficult conversation. It's part of the interpersonal skills training. One of the training that I am delivering at the moment is how to handle difficult conversations. And there are some techniques that you can follow. So it will continue to be uncomfortable. I'm not saying that it will be comfortable.
I think that's an important thing to say, right? It will never stop being uncomfortable because that's just the nature of it.
Not at all. Yeah, it is uncomfortable. I mean, even now for me, if I have to have those conversations, they are uncomfortable. They will continue to be uncomfortable. The techniques are to raise your self-awareness so you can deal with them, so you don't avoid them, because the worst thing is to avoid them. So you don't avoid them, but again, when you do it, you don't go defensive. You don't turn into blaming people, for example. So there are techniques to raise your self-awareness on how to handle it, how to control your emotions, and how to make sure that you're delivering the right message with the right intention. So the intention is always to fix things, to get things better, improve things. We should always avoid the blaming culture. So the intention should never be blaming someone.
Yeah.
And that should be clear in the message as well.
Interesting. Very interesting. I don't want to keep too much time in this topic, but it's very interesting to me because I tend always, it's something that I keep working is about avoiding conflict and how do you manage those types of difficult conversations sometimes. Do you have any a couple of tips like how to handle those conversations? For example, I don't know, it is important to set a context. Why are we having this conversation beforehand? I don't know, a couple of tips if you have it. Otherwise, we can move to other topic.
Yeah, sure. My full training will take us more than an hour.
I can imagine.
So yeah, I'll stick with it. I think one of the tips is keep the intention in mind and say it in the beginning of the conversation. So when you start the conversation, set the expectation of why you're having this conversation. So you avoid miscommunication with the other party. But then throughout the conversation, if you see yourself going on a defensive mode, stop the conversation. So maybe you take some time away. Maybe you decide, let's stop here and we continue the conversation later. Because if you start going into the wrong attitude during the conversation, it will be very difficult to reset your emotions back to an objective side. So if you feel that you're losing it, it's becoming too emotional, or it's becoming a bit personal to you or to the other party, it's better to stop the conversation, take some time away, think about it, put the context again for yourself so you understand it, and then resume the conversation later.